James Stockdale was the highest-ranking naval officer in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. He survived and endured 7 years of captivity, isolation, and torture. And when he survived, he was asked, "How did you survive?" And hence he coined what is now known as the Stockdale paradox. He said there were two types of captives. He says there were those POWs who were very optimistic. When they were captured, they said, "We're surely going to be freed, rescued by the time Thanksgiving comes along." But then Thanksgiving came and Thanksgiving went, and they were not freed. And so they said, surely by Christmas we're going to be free, and we'll be back with our families. But then Christmas came and went, and they were not freed. So they said, surely by Easter we're going to be home. And again, Easter came and Easter went. And eventually these captives, these POWs, lost faith, lost hope, lost their optimism. They were defeated, they were crushed by the spear, and they ultimately died of a broken heart. He said, but then there were others, like myself, who balanced optimism with realism. On the one hand, we were optimistic. We had faith in God. We had faith in our country. We knew that eventually this will end. Eventually we will get home. We will be free. But we didn't know when, and we didn't know how. We faced the reality that we're in a very dire and dangerous situation. And we're going to have to go through hardships and challenges in order to endure. And we built our strength, our resilience, and our courage to fight through this situation. But we balanced that with hope and faith and optimism that eventually things will get better. And I think this is good advice for the times we're living in. You know, the high holidays are upon us. For 26 years as the rabbi at the Palm Beach Synagogue, in my wildest dreams, I never imagined that we would have to rent another facility. This year we're renting the Breakers Hotel ballroom, so it's large enough to have social distancing. I never dreamt that we would not be able to conduct high holiday services in our own synagogue. I never dreamt that people would have to be debating whether or not they should send their kids back to school. I think all of us were optimistic when this began back in March, that by the new year everything will be fine, we'll be able to go back to school. But here we are. And I think the lesson and the message is that yes, we have to be optimistic and have faith that this will end okay, we will be well, we will return to normal. But when and how, that only God knows. And rather than focus on how it will end and when it will end, we have to focus on building our strength and our resilience and our courage and being able to utilize this experience for the best. This is the month of Elul. Elul is the time for introspection, for self-improvement. And what better opportunity than right now to utilize this experience to develop our personalities and our character and strengthen ourselves so that when it's over, we'll be able to look back and say, this is what I've gained. This is what I've learned from this experience. And I think one of the things we've learned most from this experience is the message of gratitude. You know, in life there's always things to complain about. And surely during a pandemic, there's a lot to complain about. Once you start, the list is very long. But what this experience taught us is that we have to focus on the positive. And perhaps now more than ever, we could appreciate things that we normally take for granted, like our friendships, our family, our community, our basic health, our ability to breathe without effort. And so the lesson we have to extract from this experience that we will live on with way after this pandemic is over is to live every day with gratitude. And for a Jew, this is fundamental because the word Yehudi is from the word hoda'ah, which means thankfulness and gratitude. Furthermore, the first words a Jew says every morning is Moda'ani, I give thanks to you. You know, talking about marriage, what is the most important trait to look for in a spouse? Here we find an interesting lesson in this week's Torah portion. The Torah portion of Ki Tetzei has many commandments, and one of them is the laws of conversion. And it says that certain nations are ineligible for conversion to the Jewish people. Which nations? Ammon and Moab. The Torah says an Ammonite and a Moabite should not be accepted into the Jewish community even after 10 generations. And the question is, why do we shun the Ammonites and Moabites? And the Torah tells us why. Because when you left Egypt, they didn't greet you with bread and water. You were weary and tired from the years of suffering and persecution and slavery in Egypt, and you left, you emancipated, and they didn't greet you with bread and water. And the question is that such a cardinal sin that even 10 generations later they should not be accepted into the Jewish community? Even Egyptians' descendants after 3 generations could be accepted, even though they threw our babies in the Nile and enslaved us. But yet the Ammonites and the Moabites, just because they didn't bring out some bread and water to greet you, should be shunned even after 10 generations. And the commentaries explain that Ammon and Moab were descendants, were children of Lot. Lot was rescued by Abraham when he was abducted in the war with the kings. And therefore they should have had a sense of gratitude to the children of Abraham, because their lives were saved by Abraham. And they should have been the first ones to bring out bread and water for the Jews when they left Egypt, to show their gratitude to the children of Abraham, because Abraham saved their father's life, Lot. And because they didn't exhibit this basic trait of gratitude, they're ineligible to join the Jewish people, because the essence of being a Jew is gratitude. Because when you're grateful for your life, then you want to seek out the giver of the life, which is God, and be grateful and thank Hashem by following His commandments, obeying His instructions, and living your life according to His will. But if you believe that life is random, it's not a gift, it wasn't handed to you by someone, by some higher being, then you have no relationship with a higher power, because you don't feel any sense of gratitude and you don't seek out to reciprocate the kindness that was given to you. And therefore, when it comes to accepting a convert, the Torah says a Moabite and an Ammonite are not eligible, because the most important criteria in any relationship is gratitude. And therefore, when it comes to marriage, if you want to marry someone, you cannot marry into Moabite and Ammonites, because in any marriage, you know that couples that are grateful to each other for everything they do for each other, they don't take anything for granted, they appreciate every little thing that's done for them, and they express that gratitude and they show that gratitude, they are destined for the happiest and the most blissful marriages. And therefore, as we go through this month of Elul and we think, what did we learn during this pandemic? Lesson number 1 is gratitude, hakarat tov, appreciation for everything that we have. You know, on Rosh Hashanah night, we all are going to sit around the table and dip the apple in the honey. Now, there are 2 sources of honey. You could get honey from a date tree, or the honey of dates, or you could get honey from bees. But yet, the honey that we use on Rosh Hashanah night is from the bees, not from the date tree, from the dates. And the question is, why? And the answer is, one of the answers is that date tree honey comes without any effort. But the bee honey takes tremendous effort. The bees have to draw out the nectar from the flowers and then work very hard to create honey. A matter of fact, it takes 8 bees their entire lifespan just to create 1 tablespoon of honey. And what the Torah teaches us is a very fundamental lesson. The lesson is like the Stockdale paradox, that yes, things will work out, things will be sweet, but don't think it's going to come without effort. Life sometimes requires tremendous endurance and perseverance and courage and hard work. But that doesn't minimize the sweetness of life. It actually increases and maximizes the sweetness in life. Because the greatest sweetness of life is not the sweetness of the date tree that comes without any effort, but the sweetness of the bees, because it involves so much effort and so much toil. And so too, as we go through this challenge, let us not fear it. Let us realize that the sweetness we will experience at the end will be even greater. It will be the sweetest of the sweet. And this year, more than any other year, will be a Shana Tova Mesukah, the sweetest of all years, because this will be the year that we will overcome the challenges of the past year. And we'll be able to look back and say, we grew, we learned, we developed, we elevated ourselves, and we emerged from this. Not only did we survive, but we've learned how to thrive as a result of it. I want to invite you tomorrow night as we have a live Zoom with Rabbi Scheiner, one of the leading rabbis and thinkers and authors and lecturers, who's going to Zoom in with us tomorrow at 7 p.m. to talk about low holidays or high holidays. A lot of people think that this year it's going to be low holidays. And Rabbi Scheiner is going to explain to us that perhaps this year, more than any other year, will not only be high holidays, but the highest of all holidays. Join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Have a wonderful day, and may the coming year be the sweetest year of all. Shana Tova u'Mesukah.